1971, I was a law student at UCLA. I went to work for a law firm in Beverly Hills. I was a supporter of the soldiers in Vietnam, not a Vietnam protester.
Next, the impact of the Pentagon Papers then and now. June 1971. Vietnam dragged into its sixth year of major combat. Tens of thousands of Americans were already dead, and still thousands more protesting on the home front asked why. But to the world's surprise, the Pentagon itself had already secretly posed that question and others years earlier. And on June 13, 1971, parts of its answers from a multi-volume history of the war began to appear in the New York Times. It was a seismic event, the publication of a covert version of the war that ran counter to much of the optimistic talk that had permeated official statements for years. The Pentagon Papers, as they came to be known, were leaked to the Times by Daniel Ellsberg, a former Defense Department
Daniel
analyst.
Ellsberg was an employee of the Rand Corporation and had access to the Pentagon Papers. He knew this information needed to be made public and made copies. He made the copies at his own personal expense. In early November 1970, he took one of the copies he had made to Senator William Fulbright. Later, he met with another senator, but the documents were just too hot for these senators to use.
Hello.
Early in 1971, Ellsberg met with a reporter from the New York Times. Finally, in June of 1971, the New York Times published excerpts of the Pentagon Papers.
Hello.
General Haig, sir. Ready.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Al. What about the casualties last week? You got the figure yet?
No, sir, but I think it's going to be quite low. It should be as last week or better.
Yeah, because it should be less than 20, I would think, yeah.
So it'll be very...
when do you get that? Will you know?
We don't get it officially till Monday afternoon, but we can get a reading on it.
Right, well, Monday afternoon officially. Well, let's wait till then. Fine. Okay. Nothing else of interest in the world?
Yes, sir. Very significant, this New York Times expose of the most highly classified documents of the war.
Oh, that. I see. I didn't read the story, but you mean that was leaked out of the Pentagon?
Sir, the whole study that was done for McNamara and then carried on after McNamara left by Clifford and the peaceniks over there. This is a devastating security breach of the greatest magnitude of anything I've ever seen.
Well, what's being done about it then? I mean, I didn't... did we know this was coming out?
No, we did not, sir.
Yeah.
There are just a few copies of this.
But what about the
volume report?
But what about the? Let me ask you this though. What about Laird? What's he going to do about it? Now I just start right at the top and fire some people. I mean, whatever department it came out of, I'd fire the top guy.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm sure it came from Defense, and I'm sure it was stolen at the time of the turnover of the administration.
Oh, it's 2 years old then.
I'm sure it is, and they've been holding it for a juicy time, and I think they've thrown it out to affect Hatfield McGovern. That's my own estimate. But it's something that it's a mixed bag. It's a tough attack on Kennedy. It shows that the genesis of the war really occurred during the 61 period.
Yeah, that's Clifford. I see.
And it's brutal.
The president pretended not to know about the Pentagon Papers, but in August of 1970, Ellsberg had shown a copy of the Pentagon Papers to Secretary of State Henry Kissinger.
The main ball's Ellsberg. We got to get this. And you know, I was talking to somebody over here yesterday. I mean, one of the PR types, and they're saying, well, maybe we ought to drop the case if the Supreme Court doesn't sustain and so forth. And I said, no, I mean, you can't do that. You can't be in a position of having, as I said this morning, we can't be in a position of ever allowing, just because some guy's going to be a martyr, of allowing a fellow to get away with this kind of wholesale thievery, or otherwise it's going to happen all over the government. Don't you agree?
Quite. I think that we're just going to have to do this, otherwise we lose all
Well, and let me say, too, don't figure that PR is too bad either. It can turn around the other way. People don't like people that are thieves.
Well, all that people have to do is look at this guy on television and his name and so forth.
Right.
The president's men slandered Ellsberg's name, religion, and appearance.
Going for you.
Now, if you will handle, I would it. But I'll be here if I'm needed.
Ellsberg and Russo were put in jail for refusing to answer the questions of the federal grand jury in Los Angeles. I wrote the brief that secured their release. The government tapped our phones in the law office. Although they denied this to the United States Supreme Court, there was a man posted outside our law office with headphones on. He was listening to our every conversation. Acting as burglars, the government's men broke into Daniel Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office and rummaged through the tapes of his conversations with his psychiatrist. Ellsberg was broken. He never thought his government would stoop to this level. The next day, he arrived in our office slump-shouldered and dispirited. One day when the lawyers were in Temple, the government served a search warrant on Daniel Ellsberg. Daniel called and asked what to do. I advised him to call the press and put on a show. The next morning, a picture of Daniel Ellsberg dressed in his Marine Corps uniform, holding up his honorable discharge, made the front page of the Los Angeles Times. Later, the government's men approached the judge himself and offered him the directorship of the FBI if he would convict Daniel Ellsberg. Instead, the judge called in the attorneys on the case and dismissed it. That was the end of the story for the attorneys, but it was not the end of the story for President Nixon. Congress was now finally ready to act. They had seen enough in this case and in the East Coast case called Watergate.
Good evening from the U.S. Capitol in Washington, where today the House of Representatives began its formal inquiry into the impeachment of President Nixon. There's been only one similar event in American history. Early in the year 1867, a committee of the House began an inquiry into the impeachment of President Andrew Johnson. He was impeached, but he was acquitted in the Senate trial by one vote. So today, the 9th of May, 1974, will go down in the history books. 1 year and 11 months after the Republican burglars were caught in the Watergate, a couple of miles from here, the impeachment inquiry got underway. It began in the meeting room of the House Judiciary Committee with opening statements from Committee Chairman Peter Rodino of New Jersey and Edward Hutchinson of Michigan, the ranking Republican. Here's how it went. One more now. Hold it up high.
The meeting will come to order. Resolved that the Committee on the Judiciary is authorized and directed to investigate fully and completely whether sufficient grounds exist for the House of Representatives to exercise its constitutional power to impeach Richard M. Nixon, President of the United States of America. We understand our high constitutional responsibility. We will faithfully live up to it.
Today, the committee starts consideration of the most awesome power constitutionally vested in the House of Representatives. The power of impeachment is one of those great checks and balances written in our Constitution to ameliorate the stark doctrine of the separation of powers. But impeachment of a president is most drastic, for it can bring down an administration of the government. The Constitution itself limits the scope of impeachment of a president to treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
Representative Hutchinson's contention is that the committee cannot vote to recommend impeachment.
Good evening. This is the 37th time I have spoken to you from this office, where so many decisions have been made that shape the history of this nation. each time I have done so to discuss with you some matter that I believe affected the national interest. In all the decisions I have made in my public life, I have always tried to do what was best for the nation. Throughout the long and difficult period of Watergate, I have felt it was my duty to persevere, to make every possible effort to complete the term of office to which you elected me. In the past few days, however, it has become evident to me that I no longer have a strong enough political base in the Congress to justify continuing that effort.
So proudly we hail, and the twilight lies gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets trembling, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land under the fray, and the home of the brave. Because we are the brave. Yes, we are the brave. We'll fight you